In the heart of every village, by the glow of the evening fire, stories rise like rivers, flowing through time, carrying wisdom, mystery, and the heartbeat of our ancestors. Welcome to Spirit River Tales, where every story breathes life, every word carries a lesson, and every silence speaks truth. If you love the rhythm of ancient voices and the magic of timeless wisdom, then join our growing tribe. Subscribe now, and let the river stories carry your spirit home. The sun had not yet risen over Omiria, but the village was already awake in its own quiet way. A soft mist floated above the red earth paths, glowing faintly as if touched by spirits. In the distance, the deep chanting of dawn prayers rose from the huts, low, rhythmic voices calling upon ancestors for protection. The air felt heavy, not with fear, but with spiritual weight, the kind that reminded everyone that the land was alive. Every tree, every breeze, every rustle in the thick forest carried meaning. As the elders always said, the forest sees what humans hide. Women slowly made their way toward the market space, balancing clay pots on their heads. The sound of wooden stalls opening echoed softly. Children, barefoot and joyful, chased one another between the huts, their laughter mixing with bird calls from the forest edge. At the heart of the village stood an ancient iroko tree, older than anyone alive. Its branches spread wide like a guardian spirit, watching over them. Under it, the council of elders sat on carved stools, their faces calm, but their eyes sharp with wisdom. Elder Maku, the oldest of them, touched the ground gently with his palm and whispered, "The red soil remembers everything, even what we try to forget." The villagers believed this deeply. To them, the forest was not just trees. It was a living witness. It saw lies. It heard truth. It protected those who honored it and punished those who didn't. Many said the spirits walked freely at dawn, when night and day met like old friends. A cool breeze swept through the village, carrying the smell of wet earth and distant wood smoke. Mothers called their children back, preparing them for the day's chores. Drums began softly in the distance, marking the start of morning trade. Yet even in the simple beauty of dawn, something felt different, heavier. People spoke in low tones. Eyes shifted toward the forest. Stories from the night before were already beginning to spread. A man passing by murmured to another, "The spirits are restless. The forest has been watching too closely." But for now, Omiria lived its morning as it always had, full of life, full of hope, and full of the ancient energy that flowed through every heartbeat of the village. The peaceful dawn was only the beginning. The forest had seen something, and soon it would reveal it. In the village of Omiria, everyone walked with quiet awareness, an invisible weight that lived in the air around them. To the villagers, the world was not only what the eyes could see. They believed strongly that unseen spirits walked beside them, guiding, warning, and sometimes correcting the living. At dawn, when the sun's first light touched the red earth, people would pause, bow their heads slightly, and whisper to their ancestors. It was not fear, no, it was respect. Even the children knew that the land had eyes. Old Mama Rena, who sold spices at the market, often said as she arranged her baskets, "A child may lie, but the forest never lies. It watches our hearts." People nodded whenever she said that. They had grown up hearing stories of travelers who ignored the spirits and lost their way, and stories of good-hearted villagers who received protection during storms or danger. As the villagers walked through the day, they carried small charms made of beads, feathers, or carved wood. These charms were believed to call the ancestral protectors, who moved like shadows between the trees. Mothers tied charms around their babies' waists. Hunters placed them on their arrows. Even the elders wore them under their robes. Near the edge of the forest, a young man named Jemba stopped suddenly as the wind brushed past him. Goosebumps rose on his skin. He whispered, "Ancestor, is that you?" His friend laughed softly. "You always feel something, Jemba." But Jemba shook his head. "The spirits walk here. Can you not feel their footsteps in the wind?" Many villagers felt it too. Sometimes the wind carried whispers like soft humming. Sometimes the trees swayed, even when the air was still. The people believed these were messages, warnings, or blessings. As the day continued, the elders gathered beneath the ancient iroko tree. Its thick branches cast long shadows, and the elder spoke in low tones. Elder Mako lifted his staff and said, "We must remain humble. When a man's heart becomes proud, he stops hearing the spirits. And when he cannot hear the spirits, he becomes blind, even to danger that stand before him." The people listened. Their faces showed worry, not because they doubted the spirits, but because the forest had been restless lately. Birds moved strangely. Night winds carried unfamiliar sounds. The river had turned cold earlier than usual. A young girl ran to her mother, eyes wide. "Mama, I heard singing from the forest last night." Her mother hushed her quickly. "Do not speak loudly. It may be a spirit guiding someone or warning us." Even fishermen returning from the river told strange stories. One said, "I felt a presence near my boat. I could not see it, but something breathed beside me." Another added in a trembling voice, "I heard footsteps on the water. No human walks like that." People exchanged uneasy looks. They did not question whether the spirits existed. They questioned what message the spirits were trying to send. As evening came and the sky burned orange, villagers began closing their doors early. Smoke rose slowly from cooking fires, forming shapes that some believed were ancestors watching the village. The night narrowed around Omiria, and a deep hush settled over the land. The villagers whispered soft prayers before sleeping. "Walk with us, protect us, warn us." And though they could not see them, everyone knew the spirits were there, moving in the tree's shadows, gliding over the red soil, watching, waiting, guarding, or preparing to warn them of something greater. The air felt heavier that night. Something was coming, and the spirits had already sensed it. Omiria was never silent, not even for a moment. The village breathed like a living creature. Its heartbeat made of human footsteps, echoing chants, and the songs of the land itself. Every day began with a gentle stir, like the world waking from a long dream. Before the sun fully rose, the distant sound of women pounding yam drifted across the red earth paths. Their wooden mortars rose and fell rhythmically, like drums calling the day into existence. Mama Terre, always the first to start, shouted to her neighbor, "Wake your hands, sister. The sun is already smiling at us." Roosters crowed, children yawned, goats bleated. Everything mixed together, forming a melody that only those born in Omiria could truly understand. As the light brightened, the narrow paths filled with movement. Women wrapped in colorful cloths walked gracefully with baskets balanced on their heads. The scent of roasted maize and ground spices floated through the air. Traders rearranged their goods, hand-woven mats, carved masks, dried fish, beads that shimmered like drops of sunlight. Men sharpened tools, prepared for the long day in the farms. The iron scraping against stone made a harsh yet familiar sound, echoing through the morning air. Children ran barefoot through the village, laughing loudly, kicking up dust as they chased each other around the huts. Their joy was wild, innocent, full of the energy the elders used to say came from the ancestors. One boy shouted, "You cannot catch me. I run like the forest wind." His friend laughed back, "Then I am the thunder. You cannot escape me." Mothers watched them with half-smiles, calling out warnings when they got too close to the goats or the cooking fires. Babies clung to their mothers' wrappers, peeking at the world as if discovering it anew each morning. The heart of Omiria, the marketplace, grew louder as more people arrived. The beating of drums from afar and signaled the start of trade. A tall young drummer called Kola tapped a rhythm that made even tired villagers sway their shoulders. Grandmothers gathered near the Irako tree, their voices weaving stories of old times. In the days before you were born, one elder would say, "The spirits walked openly among us." Children pretended not to listen, but their eyes widened every time. The Irako tree, ancient and towering, cast a long shadow across the village ground. Elders arrived one by one, their walking sticks touching the earth with slow, steady thumps. They sat in a circle, their robes flowing like water around them. Their deep voices carried wisdom, and when they spoke, even the restless wind paused as if listening. The movement of the villagers had a rhythm of survival, love, tradition, and hidden fears. Every footstep echoed the village's history. Every voice added to the sacred noise that kept Omiria alive. But beneath the lively heartbeat, something deeper stirred. Some villagers moved faster, speaking in hushed tones. Some looked over their shoulders more often than usual. The forest wind carried whispers, strange ones. Still, Omiria continued its daily dance. Life moved forward with energy, color, and sound, even though the people could feel that the land had begun to breathe differently. A storm was coming, not of rain, but of mystery, and the heartbeat of Omiria was changing, even if the villagers had not yet understood the warning in their steps. In the center of Omiria stood the ancient Irako tree, older than the memory of any living soul. Its roots twisted deep into the red earth, holding secrets of centuries. The villagers believed the tree listened, truly listened, to every footstep, every whisper, every lie told in the shadow of its great branches. This was where the elders met every sunrise, the council that guarded the village's wisdom. Their walking sticks touched the earth in slow, steady beats as they approached, each step carrying the weight of years. Their robes were simple but dignified, marked with symbols of the ancestors. Spiral suns, carved birds, woven stories. When they gathered, even the morning wind seemed to bow. Elder Mosi, the oldest among them, cleared his throat, his voice rough like dry leaves. "My brothers, my sisters, the land speaks again." The other elders nodded, forming a circle around him. Elder Neema, whose eyes were sharp like eagle feathers, responded softly, "The forest has grown restless. I feel in the cold wind that comes before dawn." Elder Bako leaned on a staff and sighed deeply. "Our people must be guided. When the earth trembles, children cling to their mothers. When spirits move, they cling to the wisdom of elders." As they spoke, villagers began to gather nearby, quiet, respectful, listening from a distance. Everyone understood that when the elders met under the Irako tree, something important was stirring. Mosi raised his hand, signaling silence. "We must remind the people," he said, "that the forest is not just trees. It holds ancestors. It holds eyes. It sees what humans hide." A small murmur spread among the villagers, for this proverb was old, older than the village itself. Mothers whispered it to their children when they misbehaved. Hunters said it before entering the forest, placing a hand on their chest. But today, the words fell heavier. Neema turned her gaze toward the forest's edge. The shadows between the trees were darker than usual, thick and still like watching eyes. "I have heard strange things," she said. "Footsteps at night, when no one is walking. A woman's voice calling from places where no woman lives." Some of the younger villagers gasped. Mosi closed his eyes, drawing strength from the ancestors. "The land warns before it punishes," he murmured. "We must not ignore these signs." The elders discussed the harvest failure, the thin crops, the disappearing small animals in the forest. The sun had barely risen over Omiria, yet the village was already alive with sounds that had echoed through generations. Gentle dawn chants drifted from the huts as mothers called upon the ancestors for protection. The red earth paths still held the coolness of night, and the tall Irako trees stood like silent elders watching over their people. Children ran barefoot between the huts, laughing as they chased each other, their feet kicking up clouds of red dust that floated like tiny spirits in the air. In Omiria, life was simple but deeply rooted in tradition. The villagers believed that the forests around them were more than just trees and shadows. They were living guardians. Elders often said, "The forest sees what humans hide," and no child in Omiria ever doubted those words. Every evening, when the drums called the elders under the great Irako tree, stories of forest spirits, ancestral protectors, and mysterious beings would fill the air. These tales shaped the village's heartbeat, teaching the young and reminding the old that humans were never truly alone. Near one of the smaller huts, a boy moved quietly, carrying a clay pot bigger than his own head. This was Kato, the boy everyone knew yet few truly understood. At just 14, he already carried responsibilities heavier than the pot on his head. His grandmother, old and frail, depended on him for everything. But the boy never complained. His face always carried a soft, tired smile, one that showed humility rather than weakness. "Kato, my child, don't work too much," Grandma Benna called weakly from the doorway. her voice rarely louder than a whisper. He stopped, adjusted the pot, and smiled. "Grandma, I am strong. The ancestors give me strength," he said, though his small arms trembled slightly. Everyone in Omiria agreed there was something different about the boy. He worked in the farms when no one else would, fetched water for neighbors without being asked, and always shared a piece of firewood or a handful of berries, even when he had almost nothing himself. Poverty lived in his house, but kindness lived in his heart, and that made him richer than most. Still, times were changing. The last harvest had failed, and whispers traveled through the village like wind through grass. "There will be hunger this season," one woman murmured at the market. "The gods are angry," another added. "No, the forest spirits," an elder corrected. They had been silent for too long. Food grew scarce. Even the strongest hunters returned with empty hands. Cato felt this hardship more than anyone. Some days he ate nothing so Grandma Bennett could eat. Other days he returned from the forest with nothing but a bit of firewood, his stomach empty and his hope thin. Yet still, he offered help wherever he could. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, strange stories began to spread. Fishermen returned from the river, trembling as if they had seen a ghost. "I swear on my father's grave," one fisherman said, "I saw an old woman walking across the riverbank, but she left no footprints behind her." Another added, "She moved like smoke, like she wasn't truly touching the ground." Children who overheard the whispers shivered. "She is not of this world," one child muttered. "My mother says she comes from the spirit forest," said another kid with wide eyes. The fear of the unknown began to coil around Omiria like a slow, tightening rope. Elders gathered under the iroko tree and spoke in low, troubled voices. "We must warn the children," one elder said gravely. "No one should enter the deep forest after sunset," another agreed. And so, as darkness fell each night, doors shut early, fires burned low, and even the boldest men avoided the forest paths. Something was stirring in Omiria, something beyond human understanding. Cato felt the tension, though he didn't fully understand it. As he walked home one evening with a bundle of firewood strapped to his back, he noticed how silent the forest seemed. The usual rustling of birds, the chirps of insects, gone. Only the crunch of his footsteps broke the stillness. He whispered, "Forest spirits, if you can hear me, watch over grandmother tonight." He didn't know that the forest had been watching him for a long time, watching his kindness, watching his struggles, watching the purity of a boy who had nothing, yet still gave everything. And somewhere deep within the shadows, something else was watching too, quietly, curiously, waiting for the moment their paths would cross. A moment the villagers would later describe as the beginning of a story they would tell for generations. Omiria lay quietly between the thick forest like a forgotten treasure guarded by spirits older than memory itself. The red earth paths twisted through the village like veins, carrying the life of its people from one end to the other. Every morning began the same way. Soft dawn chants rising from mud huts, drifting like smoke toward the sky. Mothers sang prayers to the ancestors, calling on them to watch over children, the farms, and the old ones who could no longer walk far. The sound of wooden pestles pounding grain echoed through the air, mixing with the laughter of children who ran barefoot across the dusty ground. Their feet slapped the earth with a rhythm that matched the drums used during ceremonies. Beneath the great iroko tree, elders gathered in slow, deliberate steps. They whispered about tradition, told stories of the past, and reminded each other that the forest was always listening. In Omiria, no one doubted the spirits. "The forest sees what humans hide," the elders always said, and the people believed it deeply. Some said the forest kept secrets. Others said it kept justice. All these beliefs breathed through the village like wind through tall grass. On the far edge of Omiria, in a small hut made of sun-dried clay, a boy stepped outside with a worn clay pot balanced on his head. This was Cato, thin, small, and quiet, yet carrying a strength many grown men admired. At 14, he was already an orphan, with only his frail grandmother left in this world. Inside the hut, Grandma Binta's weak cough echoed like the cry of a tired bird. "Cato, my child, don't push yourself too hard," she whispered. He turned and smiled softly. "Grandma, I am fine. The day is young and the ancestors walk with me." Though he spoke bravely, his eyes showed the weight he carried. Every morning he fetched water from the stream, chopped wood from the forest edge, and worked on any farm that would pay him even the smallest handful of grain. His clothes were faded, patched many times, and sometimes his stomach growled louder than the village drums, but he never let anyone see him complain. Kindness seemed to flow naturally from him. Often, as he handed firewood to a neighbor or helped lift baskets at the market, people would say, "Cato may be poor, but his heart is richer than the chief's treasury." Still, life was becoming harder. The rains had betrayed the village that year. The crops had dried before they could grow, and hunger lingered like a shadow over every home. Pause. But beneath it all, a tension lingered, subtle yet insistent, like the low warning of distant thunder. At the edge of the village, in a modest, weathered hut, a boy named Cato emerged into morning light. 14 years old, slight and worn by hardship, yet his eyes shone with a brightness that no poverty could dim. "Grandma," Cato called softly, stepping into the dim interior. His grandmother, Binta, lay on a thin mat, wrapped in faded cloth, her breath shallow. "You are awake early, my child," she rasped, reaching a hand toward him. "Do you not tire from all this work?" Cato placed a pot of water beside her and lifted a bundle of firewood. "I tire not, Grandma. The day waits for no one, and the forest will not forgive laziness." Binta smiled weakly, her eyes reflecting both pride and sorrow. "You carry the world on your young shoulders, Cato. Even the spirits may grow tired watching such devotion." "I am strong enough for both of us," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "One day I will see more than these paths and these trees. One day," his voice trailed off, dreams folded quietly into his heart, hidden from the world. The village, however, was troubled. The harvest had failed. Fields of once green millet now lay barren, the soil cracked from the sun, and hunger whispered through every home. Even with his own stomach aching, Cato's hands reached for others first, helping the widow carry firewood, mending a broken basket for a neighbor, offering a smile to children too young to understand the weight of scarcity. "You are a child of uncommon heart, Cato," Elder Tamba said one morning, watching him lift a sack heavier than himself. "The forest watches you closely. Mark this well. Goodness shown without expectation bears its own reward, though it may come from unseen places." And yet, Omiria trembled in quiet fear. Rumors had begun to stir like restless wind in the trees. Fishermen returned from the river with eyes wide and voices hushed. "I saw her," one whispered his friends, trembling. "An old woman walking where no man dares. Her feet touched nothing, yet she moved as though the earth itself carried her." The children huddled in clusters, whispering among themselves. "She is not of this world," they said, voices trembling. "The spirits sent her to watch us, to test our hearts." That evening, Cato returned with firewood, the bundle heavy on his back. He paused at the edge of the forest, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. The wind rustled through the trees, whispering secrets he could almost understand, and the first shadows of night stretched long across the red earth paths. "Forest spirits, watch over us," he murmured. "Protect Grandma. Guide our village." And as the small hut came into view, a faint, flickering movement caught his eye. A figure, bent and ancient, yet graceful in a way no human could be, stood at the edge of the forest. Cato blinked, unsure, but curiosity mingled with respect. He did not yet know that the old woman, a being of the spirits, had come to test the heart of this humble boy. And in the quiet moments that followed, Omiria held its breath, sensing that the ordinary and the magical were about to collide. Cato carried his burdens without complaint, his hidden dreams and quiet hopes alight against the shadows creeping over the village. And so, the stage was set. Poverty and kindness, fear and reverence, human and spirit, all weaving together in the fabric of Omiria's tale. The sun rose reluctantly over Omiria, painting the red earth paths with a pale golden light. But the beauty of dawn could not mask the worry etched into every face. The harvest had failed. leaving empty granaries and fields bare, and the scent of fear mingled with the smoke of morning fires. Villagers moved with hurried steps, their voices tinged with anxiety as they whispered about the anger of the forest spirits. Cato, despite his youth, felt the weight of the village's unease as he carried a heavy basket of firewood from the forest to his grandmother's hut. Each step on the red earth felt heavier than the last, his small body straining against the load. Yet his face remained calm, his eyes steady with determination. "Slowly, my child," Grandma Bennett said from her mat, her voice weak but filled with concern. "The wood will not run away, but you must care for yourself as well." "I am fine, Grandma," Cato replied, lowering the basket carefully beside her. "There is more to do than I can ever tire from. The village must not go hungry while we still have hands to help." His words were humble, yet they carried a power that even the elders had begun to notice. Elder Tamba, seated beneath the great Irako tree, observed Cato from a distance. The boys' efforts, small though they seemed, were like the first drops of rain on parched soil, a promise of hope in desperate times. "The spirits are restless," whispered a fisherman to his companions as they returned from the river, nets empty. "I saw a woman, old as the forest itself, walking where no human should tread. She moved like the wind, and yet the earth carried her." Children gathered in corners, eyes wide with fear. "She is not of this world," they said, voices trembling. "The spirits send her when they are angry. She watches us, tests us." Even as worry spread, Cato moved with quiet purpose. He fetched water from the river, worked a small family plot, and gathered firewood, not for recognition, not for praise, but because he knew that someone must hold the village together, even if only in spirit. "Do you think the spirits are angry because of us?" a neighbor asked him one evening, her voice small and uncertain. Cato shook his head. "No, they see the truth of our hearts," he said. "We must be patient and kind, even in hunger. That is what the forest demands." As the sun sank low, casting long shadows over the village, whispers of the old woman grew. People avoided the forest's edge, huddling close to their fires, while Cato continued his chores with quiet resilience. In his heart, hope remained alive, fragile but unbroken, like the last bloom on a dying tree. The village's fear was real, but so too was Cato's determination. The failed harvest had pushed Omiria to the brink of desperation. Yet a single boy's steadfastness offered a glimmer of light. The forest watched, the wind carried secrets, and the villagers waited, hearts held tight in suspense, for the unseen forces that were stirring just beyond their sight. And somewhere at the edge of the forest, the old woman moved silently. Her presence a question the village could not yet answer, a test of courage and heart that would shape Cato and all of Omiria in ways they could never imagine. The sun hung low above Omiria, turning the red earth into a canvas of fire and shadow. Smoke rose from clay huts where families huddled, whispering prayers to ancestors and forest spirits alike. The harvest had failed. Granaries were bare. The village hung on the edge of worry, yet life continued, as it always did, with the rhythm of dawn chants, children's laughter, and the calls of the market women. Cato, though only 14, moved with purpose through the crowded paths. His stomach growled with hunger, but he did not slow his steps. He carried a small basket of yams and sweet potatoes he had managed to gather from the neighboring farms, enough to share with neighbors who were in worse need than his own family. "Take these, Mama Zuri," he said, offering the basket to an elderly woman seated by her doorway, her eyes red from worry and sleepless nights. "Oh, Cato," she whispered, pressing her hands to his small shoulders. "How can one boy hold so much in his heart?" Cato smiled softly. "I have little, but what I have is enough to help. The spirits watch us. They know if we are good or selfish." Even as he moved from hut to hut, helping wherever he could, villagers whispered among themselves about the anger of the forest spirits. Strange sightings had unsettled them. Shadows moving where none should, a faint voice in the wind, and now tales of a woman, old as time, walking where no human dared tread. "Children, stay close," Elder Tombo warned from beneath the Irako tree, his voice firm but heavy with worry. "The forest sees what humans hide. Do not wander, do not challenge the spirits. The balance is delicate now." Yet Cato's concern was not for himself alone. Later at the river, he helped carry water to those who could not fetch it themselves, offering a smile that seemed to chase away despair, if only for a moment. Even his grandmother, Binta, watched from the doorway of their small hut, amazed at the strength and courage of her grandson. "Cato," she said, her voice trembling, "I fear for you. The village suffers. Hunger is heavy on us all. Why do you still care for others?" He knelt beside her, brushing her white hair from her face. "Because kindness is not weighed by what we have. Grandma, a heart is measured by what it gives, not what it keeps. If we abandon each other now, the forest spirits will not forgive us." The whispers grew louder that evening, voices tight with fear. Children spoke in hushed tones of the old woman in the forest, and fishermen returned with tales of strange movements on the riverbank, where no human foot could tread. He whispered softly to himself, "I only wish for food for Grandma, and maybe one day a life where no one in Omiria goes hungry." In that hush, the children were warned again by their mothers to stay clear of the dark paths. And somewhere, deep in the forest guardian stirred. The old woman Jabari had seen was there, silent as the roots of the Irako, moving where humans could not follow. The villagers could not see her, but their hearts knew. The forest watched, and it remembered. Cato gathered his firewood and returned home, the whispers of spirits and shadows trailing behind him like a chill wind. He was only a boy, yet already he carried the weight of a village, and the quiet bravery of one who would face hunger, fear, and the unseen with courage born of goodness. The sun had barely risen over Omiria, and yet the villagers spoke less of the market and more of the forest that day, and the words of Jabari spread quickly. The old woman had been seen. She was there beyond the reeds and rocks, walking paths that no man, woman, or child should dare follow. Cato's heart, though small and young, held a quiet hope. Perhaps, he thought, the spirits watched not only to punish, but to reveal, to teach, to test the hearts of those brave enough to care for others. And as the sun climbed higher over Omiria, shadows shifted in the deep forest, reminding all who saw them that the forest indeed sees what humans hide and remembers. The village of Omiria woke with soft hum, the first rays of sun spilling over red earth paths in thick forests. Smoke spiraled from clay huts as mothers stirred morning fires, while the children, barefoot and free, darted between stalls in the marketplace, laughter mixing with the calls of traders. Beneath the great Irako tree, elders gathered, their faces lined with time and wisdom, hands resting on carved staffs. Their voices rose and fell in chants of guidance and caution, reminding the village that the forest watched all who dwelled nearby. "The forest sees what humans hide," old Malu said, his voice low but firm, carrying across the red dirt square. "It remembers every secret, every unspoken thought. Even the smallest deceit cannot escape its eyes." Cato, 14 and wiry from long days of toil, emerged from the edge of the village, balancing a bundle of firewood against his chest. His grandmother, Binta, lay beneath the woven reeds of their small hut, coughing weakly, her eyes bright with trust and love for her grandson. "Good morning, Cato," called Mama Ao, a neighbor, her face pale and lined. "Would you help me carry this grain to the council hut?" Cato set down his firewood with a soft sigh, but smiled gently. "Yes, Mama Ao, I will help. We must not let hunger decide the heart of Omiria." Even as he labored, Cato could feel the village's unease. Fishermen returned from the river, faces pale, nets emptier than ever. Among them, Jabari shook his head, voice trembling. "I have seen her," he said, clutching his worn tunic. "An old woman, moving as if the mist itself had taken form. She walks where no human should tread, and when you look again, she is gone. Not a sound, not a trace. Only the forest knows her path." The children froze, their eyes wide. "She is not of this world," whispered one, echoing the fear in the adults' hearts. Cato's chest tightened at the words, but he did not run. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, yet he carried water to the elders, firewood to his neighbors, and small blessings to those weaker than himself. His heart, pure and steady, beat with a quiet courage. Later, when the sun had climbed higher, Cato paused at the edge of the forest. The trees swayed, whispering with the wind. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes, the stories of spirits lingering among the trunks and roots. The forest watches, even when we do not, he murmured to himself. Perhaps it sees not only what is hidden, but also what is brave and kind. From the market square, distant voices carried. "Do not go near the dark paths," shouted an elder. "The forest spirits stir. The woman of mist walks at night." And Cato, young yet wise beyond his years, nodded silently. The tales of the old woman who moved like mist, vanishing without sound, would haunt the village. Yet he knew the forest would also see his heart, the courage, the care, and the love he carried for Omiria.